All right, so let's form some sentences here just to break down where my memory is currently, because it's funny how memory always changes and how things can be different, how life is always new. So let's just form some psychosynthesizing sentences here. Let's start with power. I went with walking up as fast as I could of South Mountain today, so I have my will, my power at a premium. So let's just get some keywords to go off of here. Of course, basic technique of using your will would be to be grasping. We'll be grasping victory. And as we'll see, the sentences will be changing. So it is how things change moment to moment. And then, of course, we have the inclusion aspect, because we want to be aware of what must be developed, of what we are keeping present in our reality, and what we are bringing into the situation. Excuse my dog. So, of course, because we're having cultural conversations here, let's bring in the supernatural and how my dogs are barking, and the very idea of how something is there or not. As humans, we'd find this as a hallucination. So this creates the whole idea of how things can get drawn out. That's what we'll be doing here with our will. Well, their wills are drawn. They see power in keeping that interaction. Some dogs don't, but that's training to be human, and that's human nature versus animalistic nature, zoomorphic versus anthropomorphic. It'd be funny if we knew the dogs were talking to someone out there. So let's just start. I'm going to show you. Well, right now I'm picking up a sentence in my memory, so let's just write it down, because it is that everything is perfect right now. I'm responding to the perfection of the stones of faith just out of passion. So it is that I'm in the process of grasping power through the inclusion of all victory in my life. So, right, I want to recall the main victories in my life, and that'd be what has brought me to the highest level of performance to now. So, right, I'll recall my highest tests, getting hundreds, and how good those felt, because after those victories, life it not only seemed perfect, it was perfect in the sense of performance, because everything that came through my mind was perfection. This is about how life at a serene level, enlightenment seems natural. The nothingness is the kindness. So now let's go to, because that points out that I become the victory, we just got to, now I am the victory through the inclusion of all power. Now, since we're focusing on the supernatural and this comes to be. Well, what you realize here is that point of view that is almost perfect, that is always striving, that part of you that could be the best, I think that hangs around a lot of us. And that is a supernatural aspect, because it is that fighting chance, that next best part of us that we're trying to carry over into our best. And it is, that is an illusion right now because we're focused. And in my best, it is an illusion. Today I actually didn't do my best, but I know I keep that too because we're focused. Of course, we can always redirect our focus. So now that we know we are the victory through the inclusion of all power, we are grasping fate as I know it, because I've set my faith and fate up to be the most victorious of my life, to be famous. So here we are. Now, what I'm noticing in my mind is the supernatural come to play. And am I doing my best? Well, I am doing my best because I'm focused. Now I have a sentence clarified. Now I realize I accept everything in my life. I'm completely open. This is therapeutic too, because I am in an open manner. So I am focused on so many things, such as the way sentences are changing. So we have the best sentence here. Now let's combine that with another element. So it's, of course, we'll just go through this always as much as possible. Will, feeling, thought, imagination, logic, passion, and action. Now I want to get to be will, feeling, thought, passion, imagination, action, logic, and it come forth as possible and direct as possible. And then we'll mix it up as well, because it should also be passion, action, logic. Innovation comes up for thought here, which is funny. And this is what we need to free as well. Also, I'm trying to conjure up the mystery to let it solve itself, the supernatural solve itself, because it should move into my superconscious state and decide. But this is just how memory works. It's freeing up our memory to be random, to be mysterious, like an old rock and roll musician you may have known. So let's finish that off with feeling. And it's funny here because now we notice that what we're trying to do and how my mind comes up with things. And of course, I'm going to go back to will now, and it's how my will is magnetizing to certain things. So this is all about getting the mysterious present. So the imagination can work in accordance with logic and keep everything passionate with the most practical action. Now, so let's go with I will the power of my imagination to be beautiful. Well, beauty is all about, in psychosynthesizing, about the harmony through conflict. So let's see us cross that boundary here. Now, I'm actually sensing the conflict to be wanting the dark matter to wanting to change in mystery. So let's change with it. Let's add something else. Well, this is what's so interesting when the problem becomes agitated itself. Well, I'm aware if I was in paradise right now it would be much different. And I am in paradise. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. It's beautiful outside. The mountain, I had clarity of thought when I was up there. I can imagine myself up there right now, and that solves. I will the power of my imagination to be beautiful. So I'm picking thoughts out of my mind here to make clear, to enhance my learning, to create the best situation so I can evolve. Now, it is that I'm thinking many things at right now on how I'm holding the tree of thought of my psychosynthesis. It is my tree of life. It is that the wheel, feeling, thought, imagination, logic, passion, and action are perfect. So it is that all I need to do is generally hold those things in my tree of life, and I could just pick out action, passion, will, thought, feeling, imagination, and logic. I could just do that. And it is interesting how I could just narrow in on logic in that and how that happened. According to passion, though, I felt more magnetism of feeling described, not just separating from the facts. I saw feeling play into that. We're harnessing the dark matter and what it can be here. So now let's the harmony through this creates practical action where we are. So this is just a basic introduction to getting to a point where we are primed for learning. We have the most practical action set up for ourselves because we'll keep this. So now for power, for will, will transmits a premium of grasping. We can make this a character or the will. Notice how we can take a subject and make it something. We're trying to think as much as possible. Let's put the will character into South America right now. Well, in South America, it's much different than North America. Let's think how nature in the Amazon and how they're more tribal. Let's connect to the supernatural there and how they see the alteration of consciousness, and through the ability to transmit a premium of grasping victory. The inclusion of nature is most powerful. Now let's take it to where power is at its most powerful for me and what it can be. Right now, we're just imagining that in Will's life, in the will, I am experiencing what I know to be life at its best. Things can only get better. So, for instance, it gets tricky here because the supernatural changes, especially with my dogs here, and how they want to pick up something from nature that is deemed aggressive. But what is the true state of their being? How are they really feeling right now? I can go over and shift their being. I can observe their perceptions. And it's funny because do I want to see their truth as an illusion? No, I want to work with what they have. I think it's funny. They thought the flies were aggressive there. If they come into my house, they are. So, anyways, I see the purpose in what's being done. Okay, so the will in South America, and we can also take the will and imagine it in Africa or Australia, anywhere around the world. Everything plays a factor. Will transmits a premium of grasping victory through the inclusion of nature is most powerful. Now, the inclusion of nature here is what's important. In America, how much are we including nature in our present realities when we're inside? Are we thinking of what the heat's really doing? We're paying attention to the coolness of the air on our inside, but are we seeing how that shifts outside to us? We walk outside. Are we are aware, but when we clarify that to ourselves, we want to be feeling ourselves sensing, so we can get our power to the most precise it can be. So we want feeling to be most precise, so power can be thought with an imagination logically through passionate action. So let's take a look at our fascination here. Well, that hits a lot of Sally Hawkshead's passionate advantages here. The nurturing, loyal, and sincere quality of the beloved, that's us really caring about us. So let's highlight care. Notice what the fascination is doing. That's interesting. Sally lists the fascination as being some high out selling brand marketer, and I'm here pointing out how moral it is, how there's ethics in that. I will get my philosopher's cards and to add some thought into it in just a second too, because we're going to enhance this. So care, and then the intrigue, the discerning, perceptive, and considerate aspect. Well, yeah, the apex of our experience. We want that to always be. That's what I've always loved about life. And then the attentive, dedicated, and efficient part, the orchestrator. This is with alertness. So what we see here is I see it narrow in on the dedication, because that's what we highlighted. There's similarities there. So I'm going to hold that state of alertness and passion here. And we'll see how the power brought me directly to passion. And that's what we're highlighting here, because, right, I needed emotion here to be prime. And it is so my action is magnetizing most practically the logic that I need, so I can be most passionate about my imagination and what it's creating. So now we see politically, I've opened up some diplomacy. This is what I want to raise awareness about, is how we can have diplomacy in a situation, and how we can see the very idea of what power comes to be. And that is everything we need it to be. So as well as that talent, emotionally, this I'm just going to put the talent here because this puts the potential of talent at its highest. This is the apex. So this is what we need. So I should be able to recall. This is what I'm interested in recalling and working with what I need. Well, see, what I was interested in right now is where my imagination would go when I got to this point. Well, of course, it's right here too, using what I'm doing, and it is to keep this point later. So it's interesting how I'm playing with the dark matter and checking later how I'll be able to keep this, because I want to keep this for a long time. So then, of course, there's the people's champion, the dynamic, inclusive, and engaging aspect. Well, this makes me naturally that. It's interesting how anger could play out in a situation, but I know someone at their happiest is not anywhere near anger, and that's interesting when it comes to logic and harnessing a psychic power, because that's what we want to know, is how to be able to prove that we can be in a good situation. So then, here we are with the catalyst, and it's supposed to be social, out of the box, and energizing. Well, it's interesting because I played the catalyst to get here. Hydra, the star dragon, also of understanding consequences of choice, is what brought me here. So let's highlight that. Hydra, the catalyst. Now we have a character. Certain cultures in Mayan and ancient Aztec rainforests, dragons have room. Think about the show Lost and how that mysterious jungle creature was haunting them. The black smoke, yeah, that rises to be the mysterious mystery of what we can use to create our best abilities, proving psychic nature is valuable to our world. Hydra the catalyst, huh? So now I'm thinking, well, I'd like to get my philosopher's oracle real quick, because I'm all about virtue ethics, and that I think it's the feeling that brings me there. I mean, thought, that's about silence. We could silence it out, but we'll do that with the philosopher's deck. We'll put that there. Let's see where that brings us to. I'll be right back. Okay, before we get into the philosopher's oracle here, and we get this passion and power to be expressed, let's prime it up. So the basic technique, of course, that psychosynthesis declares power, the will, the dynamic energy to be expressing is the inclusion, the basic technique. And then, of course, through now, I want to point out how I'm sharing this because as I'm teaching you, it is that I know teaching something helps you solidify something because of the echo, the the identity, the creativity of me sharing this is helping it stay in so many different ways, not just solidifying, but it's ruminating. So the power is the motivation. And the grasping is the basic technique, and the inclusion is what must be developed. So we have developed this, but see, what's interesting here is this is a work in progress. I need to make sure I'm doing my best. So I am going running tomorrow, and I need to make sure that I improve, and we're going to be tracking results here. Now this gets interesting because what I'm pointing out here is I can think any thought in relation, and through inclusion here, what must be developed, I am going to create the best thought. So yes, and then for feeling, of course, we're attaching and centralizing. Attaching is the basic technique, and centralizing is what must be developed. And we are centralizing around love. That is the highest goal, and the motivation, as well as victory being the highest goal for will. So now we have that primed. Now, what I'm watching is my memory ruminate here. What I think is very interesting here is I'm going to call him Pegasus the Water Guardian and have him braze over my waters, the waters in, let's use Salt River here, to carry my thoughts to where I'm going. So I want to use nature around me first off. So let's philosophize here with this will, with this power. Let's include the other things, because of course in this there's thought, and I want to bring in the stillness of passion when that thought comes to reach its enlightening moment. That's what we're hitting here. We're hitting enlightenment. So, right, what's interesting here is learning points out that enlightenment is a point where you have the aha moment, the light bulb comes on, and you connect to a memory where you grow in how your roots solidify, they strengthen in becoming the flexibility, extending its strength to its utmost. You reach your top performance. So that thought, choosing that perspective that makes the silence that much more embodied, and that much more of an embodiment of the highest intelligence, that is wonderful. So here we are. Let's see who comes up first here. I don't know all these philosophers, of course. I didn't major in philosophy in college, but yes, here we go. Let's see what this means to our will and power. And this is me taking the general look at the 7 types of psychosynthesis and applying it. So this Philosopher's Oracle deck is interesting because it not only gives me a sentence here, or sentences, but it gives me like Gemini, the Sun, and Mars and Aries, and even a location, Boston, Massachusetts. So I picked up 44 here. So let's just draw some similarities here. Uh, it's because the first thing I noticed, I just raised over this card, and before I read it, I'll go to something to show you. I think we're gonna try and choose thought as much as possible. We're gonna try and choose as many thoughts and ravel them out, because this is about creating something, creating a think piece, and analyzing something as much as possible. We're separating the facts that are making globalization seem improper or invaluable to our situation here on Earth, and especially in the stars too, because I'm sure there's so many people out there with their supernatural thoughts, just starry-eyed and not really creating a difference. So 44 is in my elemental oracle deck, the connection to the biome. So yes, remember we brought up the inclusion of all power of nature. We are using that taproot to connect. And of course, I'll listen to Taproot by Michael Hedges later. One of my favorite, my inspiration for acoustic guitar. So don't be too timid and squeamish about your actions. All life is an experiment. The more experience you make, the better. So that's what I'm doing right here. This is an experiment. This is experimental, and we're playing with the elements here. I am using what I think is purity in my life, and I'm sharing it as innocence, and I'm being faithful towards how the fire in my life, the ignition, is helping me use power. In the elemental oracle deck, it's volcanoes that represents power. So I'm melting. I'm using my melting force here. I'm drinking my mushroom coffee. I'm journeying away here with you to see the Gemini sun. I'm a Gemini in the Mars and Aries. I believe that's just that what I'm working on right here. This is it, and it's to point out that life comes up as what you need it to be, which gets interesting in a political situation. We need that right now for our war regarding the Middle East, Iran. So let's see here, the next card. So, well, experiment. That gets us to, sorry, I shouldn't have gone on here. Let's not be too timid here and too squeamish. So let me just see what comes up here. So will, action, feeling, thought, imagination, passion, and logic. So things are mixing up a little bit, but I still want to choose what is logical and go with the facts as they seem most orderly. So let's see here. What I want to focus on here is this makes me feel, because I love to think about things. When I choose one of these cards, I think too. So let's see this come out to be the expression, not of practical action, but of the will, making victorious decisions right now so I can have my best physical future. Because isn't that funny that best run, the motivation of power that comes to be, the inclusion of that power. Remember, that's the technique here. Does it get controversial? And how about mentally right now? For me, I've got to think that I do my best tomorrow. It isn't the pain that's stopping me. It's the focus on my effort and mediating that and making it the best, because I can change it with my thoughts. That's the thing. The mental is playing aspects now where it changes, because I can go with that thought and see what it does in so many different ways. thoughts in my life now can go anywhere. I can think anything. There's no wrong path because I'm going to detail it. So let's see the imagination flourish there with that. Oh, we got Carl Jung here. That the last one was from Ralph Waldo Emerson. So, a Leo card in the shadow self of Switzerland. So, Leo, the lion, I align that with my King of Hearts, the Master of Love. Let's see if Carl Jung can make that really hit the spot here. I'm sure he can. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Well, right then and there, since I brought up the Ace of Hearts, and he discusses his shadow self here. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Well, as I look into the present moment and what I'm creating for you here, I am dreaming. Yes, I see my creation as a dream. I am manifesting it. So let's see my will come to be here. And here's what gets so interesting about psychosynthesis. Of course, psyche here is trying to create what is going to be most valuable for you. And what gets interesting here is my shadow self comes to be when I look inside. Oh, it awakes. But that shadow self also is myself creating for you. Unless we play with the supernatural here, and it is that you're real in the sense that you matter so much that you could have an effect in my life. That's the thing. People having an effect in my life. And that goes for the war right now too. Things can have that effect, that kind of action, where what seems supernatural could be practical as well. That's where Jesus Christ comes to play in present state of mind and in a church. So let's notice how psychosynthesis comes to play out here, because now the silence of the perspective comes to be. So my will is creating interests in choosing silence as an embodiment of an enlightening perspective. So I just want to go to say I'm evolving here in my sentence creating. What I'm going to be doing is I'm eventually going to be making paragraphs here for you. And I'll stop at a paragraph or two just to show you how we can evolve in the sentence making. But also what I want to show you here is, as we're looking at the process, there's also the shadow self that looks into, like, this is me dreaming here because I'm portraying this to you. But the me who looks inside and awakes, which I'm doing as well, and we're nurturing both aspects here of duality. This goes to show how I am pointing out how I could change this to my will is creating an attachment to the embodiment of a lighting perspective through choosing silence as an aha moment, for choosing aha moments in silence. Because, of course, as I'm speaking to you and I'm sharing my aha moment, this is you. I'm embodying you. So we see how things can go from my perspective, yours, and how things show up. So let's play with the dark matter at hand here. The shadow self. And explore the next card and see how we can get the imagination to come play its hand. So we saw the dreams, but let's see. Oh, this is good. Boethius. I've never heard of this person, but there's a heart here. And it is who would give law to lovers. Love is unto itself a higher law. Boethius, accused of practicing magic through love, making love a higher law. I mean, wow, I can see this right now supernaturally if I was bringing my love into the war. I have to embody my enlightened perspective here and remember that I can receive this love through magic, but I have to be careful how I'm expressing my sense of aggression, which is important because we're getting to our imagination here. And let's see here. My will is feeling of silence. Silent. Since I'm sharing this with you, it gets interesting because with psychosynthesis, I want to change this perspective, the highest goal of the mental aspect, to embody that we're choosing the loud aspect most. So my will is feelings of silent anticipations. A Michael Hedges song. Through, we'll make things fantasy right now. Imagine fantasies, because that is a great aspect of how feeling and thought comes to play out as a function. And of course, with the supernatural here, it hits it right on. And this gets funny because fantasies of magic. This is where I always wanted to be in love. Now, we can stop here. And I want to see how my memory will increase here. I want to play a song and I'll be singing it. I don't need you to necessarily hear it through my end, but you'll hear me sing. But I'm going to play here because let's look at hallucinations here, because making love a higher law. Who would give a law to lovers? Love is unto itself a higher law. Right. Us as lovers, we believe we can do anything. And I want to take it to the fullest too. So I'm going to play and sing Hallucinate by Dua Lipa. And I've studied it a little bit. I've memorized it a little bit, but let's see how well I can do. I'll actually play the lyric video so I can see how much I pay attention and string along. Because I'm also, as I'm doing this, I'm trying to see how my sight catches my looking as I memorize. That's very important to me because this is learning. Fascination wise, here, this hits the precipice of where we can see lust and vice come to play itself out. How Sally Hogshead brought that in at the beginning of her fascination career. It's funny because as I'm coming to this, I'm playing the song Hallucinate because this is all about hallucinating the ideas that would be illusions to someone political, which creates the accused of practicing magic. But of course, it's done in love, so he is only accused. And that's what hallucinating is. It's the fun way. And that's what being in South America helps you notice, how they do ayahuasca and they help you notice just what goes on. So let's see here. I don't know if you can hear, but I'm going to sing. Pocket full of honey and I'm ready to go. No, I ain't got no money, but I'm letting you know that I'ma love you like a fool. Breathe you until I hallucinate. Mm-hmm. Body make you feel it, make you do what I want. Oh baby, I can make you pretty, I can string you along. But I'ma love you like a fool. Breathe you until I hallucinate. Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't live without your touch. No, I can never have too much. I really hallucinate when you call my name. Got stars in my eyes, and they don't fade when you come my way. I'm losing my mind, mind. Hallucinate when you call my name. Got stars in my eyes. Put you in the halfway middle of the wall. Yeah, you're my one, my favorite, my red dial. Yeah, I'ma love you like a fool. Breathe you until I hallucinate. Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't live without your touch. No, I could never have too much. I really hallucinate. I hallucinate when you call my name. Got stars in my eyes, and they don't fade when you come my way. I'm losing my mind, hallucinate when you call my name. Got stars in my eye. Wanna be right where you are. Let's go dancing in the dark. Don't wait, you can push start. Lose control. Kill me slowly with your kiss. Wrap me around your fingertips. Damn, I need another hit. Make me lose my mind. Hallucinate when you call my name. Got stars in my eyes, and they don't fade when you come my way. I'm losing my mind. Hallucinate when you call my name. Got stars in my eye. All right. I'll turn back on some meditation music. Let's put on some philosophizers philosopher's music, get the philosopher's stone going, the alchemy. That's what we're doing. We are creating magic through love here. So a few things I noticed there is I have to get my social capital to a point where I'm not hallucinating the stars in my eyes, so you can see them in a sense to where I'm changing our financial aspects, our actual world, because I'm trying to create situation through my culture, my art, to where we live to be the best. What's interesting to me while we're learning, because it comes to be the point where the opposing force of me being my best, that even comes to bring about how I'd be accused of practicing magic in the Middle Ages in some fantasy that we're creating here as Boethius, because we are spiritual and we would be using our spirits here. It is that the confliction, the demonstrator of the force of, yeah, I would say the opposing force, because that's what I'm trying to bounce back off of, is not even using itself to the best of its abilities. So it doesn't. It is that we need it if it's going to stay, because I am trying to get to a point where we have gotten to where everything's perfect, right? Well, that's the thing. When I played the song, I did notice myself not be perfect, and that could just be. It is interesting how the shadow self comes to play itself out as. Let's see here. Of course, for the philosophizing here, we'll embody the Buddha here and let's do a calming saya. Really embody that, not trying to be too aggressive, but really letting whatever we're receiving see that we are merging with it and sharing our best with it through our breath. So there's the fantasies of magic, just the hallucination for fun. And of course, in South America, hallucinating, I mean, wow, all the visions we could be creating, and then I'm seeing now that is allowed in America, which is funny. We could share it, how our imagination runs wild. It's fascinating. Where I would put that in Sally Hogshead's fascinating advantages is that of, I would put it as the motivating, spiriting, compelling aspect, because that's what we're trying to create, the magic to be the most compelling. And it is that it's so light. For some reason, because I'm physical, I wanted some sort of weight before, but I see that I have this stillness, I have the calming side, which I see the weight comes to project too. So it's very interesting. Notice here YouTube, the philosophy that we're using on YouTube and through his mysticism is that we're not trying to escape being human. That's what I love about being an anthropologist. We're not trying to escape being human. We're trying to study being human here. What I find so interesting is how we have our DNA, our ancient DNA. We'll have a lesson on that and how we tap into that. This is interesting. This is personifying Orion Mark Twain. International fame. I actually got the Starseed reading of Orion just for having the idea of doing this live stream. And this comes to be personifying the Mississippi River and Sagittarius. When you fish for love, bait with your heart, not your brain. So, right, there's a picture here of someone fishing from the moon, someone using their emotions, their instincts of protection to fish for their wildest dreams. I've gone fishing and done the very same thing, wish to protect the idea of the best fish to be my catch. So this gets very interesting here because is that logical? Let's think about that. Well, let's think about our beloved president here, Donald Trump, and how he makes money. Well, I see him as very aggressive because he has an image and how he's using his mind. He is focusing on trying to dominate. And that's quality of Andromeda, and it's funny because therapeutically they are very relaxed too. So the way knowledge is going, it's looking like that is sort of an illusion. He is doing that because I've always seen him as trying to claim a power of aggression through it is that the philosophy I want to raise here in question is when he shuts people down, when he shut the Democratic government down, when they shut down, because he has power and he wants to do this because he has the power. Is that necessary here? Well, our will here victoriously wants him to shut down, right, the hater in life. Well, I want that too, but I want him to shut down at the same time the aggression that is created in our physical manual labor that wants to personify this for us. I'm listening to the Buddha right now, so he of course is helping me see there's no need to personify this type of logic. So let's go off of our sentence here. My will is feelings of silent anticipations through imagined fantasies and magic. I think that's perfect. I mean, what if I was rousing the interest of Donald Trump right now as if we had castles and I was having fantasies and magic on how, what if I watched the Millennium, show on, I believe it's on Netflix. And well, I've been thinking about it because, of course, I'd love to watch it, but I need to know if I watched it, would we be able to have conversations in my head? Would we be able to have a point to where we harmonize all the thoughts to where I can start seeing the new songs coming out from superstars to have millions and millions of hits instantly? I mean, I'm wondering about St. Patrick's Day yesterday and how a song didn't come out that I know of. That I'm just wondering because I believe in my connection to the superconscious, not only, but life, the celebrity life that shares it should be dominating like Donald Trump since he's our president over millions of hits. We should be not only working so hard every day, but I mean enjoying our lives. We should be having segments of enjoyment here where we not only just take a step back, because we are philosophizing here. I do love to take a step back. That's important too when we're enjoying ourselves, yes. But yes, I want the memorizing whatever we're sharing to always be in our memories. We should be having the most memorable moments always, and to where the entertainment is more than us just sitting down and watching TV. I think we should have engaging conversations to where we arouse interest. We have these silent anticipations as we're talking, and that is it. The silent anticipations that we need. It's funny because I would share with Donald Trump the Truth to Touch by Yanni. I would be at El Moro, just imagining myself put the Truth to Touch. We'll do that at the end here. So, for logic here, we're trying to detach, trying to separate ourselves, and the highest goal is the facts. Now, right then and there, I see myself trying to separate the facts. Well, no. As my notes go, I'm trying to use my know how to separate what isn't real. Well, right. Of course, I'm separating the fact that this is a fantasy. I just love to keep the supernatural focus to harmonize everything divine and share how wonderful life is. That is what's celestial about it. But right, when it gets to become sacred, that's when it gets interesting because I love to share it as this is making meaning right now. That's why I have it on YouTube because this is making moments happen right now in my imagination, and it is glimpses of enlightenment for someone else. If not now, but where I am sharing this, because of course that's what I believe in, alienated things, which is what Donald Trump does. And by the way, let's bring up the point that I am imagining myself in the construction of Barack Obama's White House, just his portrayal of the White House and how it was when he was present as president and in Chicago, and I'm in the Oval Office because he's giving people the opportunity to imagine making decisions. And I've imagined myself as president before. I'm sure everyone has. And I wanted to make the call with my supernatural, my super conscious focus that is light, that is like a starfish, starry eyes. My karaoke name is Past Starry Eyed, and just taking that to where I feel like I am controlling everything. And as I know I am, but right, that's what it's interesting with the sacred. We have to be very contemplative about it. That's what's so great right now when we're doing this. We opened up the ideas of how we're focusing and changing. So yes, logically, this separates. So we're separating. We're creating the space now. At the eighth, that's the facts that I want to get to. The fire, the vision, the burning sensations, and it makes it all magical and makes the celestial fire, earth, water, and air come to show that the celestial is sacred too. Because of course, when we harmonize everything and use the memory, it unifies, harmoniously helping us endure all the beauty we're taking in. Because life is always beautiful. I'm sure there's philosophy in here about that. I'd like to point out how fun learning is here, and teaching too. So this separates the celestial from the sacred. creating the fact of space being a know-how. I think space can be a know-how because of how simple it is, how we just know our space to be, and then space, outer space. It's funny how inside the Earth here, it could be inner space. Can we talk about the inner Earth here and how we have that set up? Isn't that wonderful? I know that's held in our Akashic records and ancient DNA here. So what's coming to me from this, we're bringing up the Akashic records, and I'd like to let you know where I'm at in my psychic life. Let's choose a card for this, because we've got logic there, and it is a question of logic as to what I should be doing with this situation. I grew up and had a friend whose dad was a psychic shaman, spiritual healer, sensei, and I believed in a miracle because at one point in my life I was not as focused as far as performance goes, and the manner of learning knowledge, wisdom. I was still focused, but yes, I believed for him to save me in miracles because I've always had a devotion and a miraculous faith. I believed things could happen. So this is why I'm focusing on the supernatural here and the celestial and sacred. So let's flip a card, and because I'm trying to get him to speak to me, but he won't speak to me, and it's funny, we get the sleeping prophet here. He's like the sleeping prophet here, and this brings up an intense gaze, and he does have an intense gaze, and it's funny. The first couple words that comes up are a soulmate, and it's interlocking. It's a kid and adult, and here you can see just real quick, and he's personified himself as a kid, which is interesting because at this point the only problem with that with me, and I think why he doesn't talk to me as much, is because I have to cross boundaries and he is unwilling to do that at times. Like, he's unwilling to work with my parents on how I govern the alteration of consciousness through even alcohol. I don't have the freedom with my parents completely, which is interesting. So it says a soulmate is an ongoing connection. And let's look at the kid. I could be the adult here with the problem of the diplomatic solution being needed. Is an ongoing connection with another individual that the soul picks up again in various times and places over lifetimes. Picks up again in various times and places over lifetimes. Now, I just glossed over that because I felt like he was that father, that soulmate kind of special dream that I could have created to where I could have become a shaman when I was in my 20s. But that's not really what I wanted. What I wanted was to travel the world and master my physical body and become as most in shape as possible. So it's interesting how things have gone and how he's not speaking to me because of the situation I'm in with my parents. But the true connection here, of course, we can notice is not the drama. It's not the peacemaking, really. It's the soulmate is an ongoing connection with another individual that the soul picks up again in various times and places over lifetimes. Because, of course, what we can do with this, all this, the conflict with my parents, is have past lives play out. Anytime my life regresses, it goes to play out where everything changes and things go on and on to multiply, and the various things become reliable. So let's get back, because we just have to finalize we have logic. We need to finalize passion, which is great because passion and feeling. This is a great point because passion needs to amplify that feeling, this state we're in, which we have gotten to. Well, we gotten to the nice general relaxed state, but now we need to take those silent anticipations and make them louder and show the dedication and what the faith can do, and we need to respond to the stillness here. So let's flip a card and see what we got. Ooh, clairvoyant, holistic health, imaginary friends. Right, it comes up. Edgar Casey again. How much of an imaginary friend, and what does Anthony Sanchez, the sensei shaman spiritual healer, play himself out to be in my life? What kind of electromagnetic tuning is going on here? Because that's what we're going to be doing through this dedication. The passion, the energy that includes the stillness. We're transforming here. So as it goes, it says, thoughts are things, choose the good ones. That's funny because I feel like I come to a place of lack thereof. But just the other day, as it is, I realized a lack thereof can create abundance. So that's really all I wanted from the faith, though. I wanted abundance. I mean, it is that's how I wanted to always perceive holistic health and clairvoyance. Imaginary friends, though. Well, right. With the reality of Anthony Sanchez, well, when I lived in his house, I was able to use my beliefs as I was and how I wanted to. As I'm sharing this, I realize that things change, and what I could have gotten, and what gets interesting is him as an imaginary friend, and thoughts are things, and choosing the good ones. Well, the best one, and the one that I had there, was that my superconscious, like it is here, it was very stable. I was always in that present state, and I was able to learn. And no matter what, I wasn't able to be detracted from that superconscious state. So it is that I'm taking the abstract view of myself and making it concrete through the light here, which I want to point out because I'm plasterizing a light frequency that makes my life solidified in harmony as I have it and need it there. So, and I think we should all have this, really. We should all be correlating all these realities so we can make money the best it can be. So how is that going to take our faith? So let's just choose the best thought here. What we have, the basic technique, of course, is responding to the stillness. What must be developed, the faith, the motivation, and then the very highest goal being perfection. So that's easy. That's what we're doing here. We're choosing the perfection. So we have my will is feelings of silent anticipations through imagined fantasies and magic. This separates the celestial from the sacred, creating the fact of space being a knowledge. So now let's add this is stillness. Because what gets interesting here is the politics. And what you come to realize is every thought comes to play itself out when you're an adult as political if it's not perfect. So what we're declaring here is this is stillness responding to the perfection of faith. And let's put it in the highest manner, because at Anthony Sanchez's house, when I was living with his son, and the first time it was his place he was paying for, even though it was in his son's honor, I did have high. It was always in the most high, as we have it as a religion says. So let's put it in the most high. Now, of course, I'm listening to the Buddha here, the divine nature. So let's see this sacrilegious pilgrimage we're going on as proclaiming my faith and honoring it. All right, so that's the best thought I see I could have chosen for right now, which is interesting. I think we're going to have to improve on that, and we'll keep doing that day after day. All right. So now let's see what we can coordinate here, what kind of results we can manifest through our orientation toward purpose with all the perfection we have, because let's see if I can maintain my best. This is my philosophy for the day we're creating here, which is what we're going to be doing. I've got another Edgar Casey one, so let's pass that. Let's actually choose here, because I'm coordinating here. Let's see what I can play with that, and I will. Let's just search around, because we're looking for. Let's see if I can find something under performance, because that's what I need as a philosopher. So this is perfect, because what I'm seeing here now is what you should do as a psychic is play through thoughts and see what your elements are playing with. So I pass over a Libra card, Amethyst, Afghanistan alignment. That is really a card I could need. Let yourself be drawn to the strong pull of that which you truly love. Because of course I'm trying to rely on the higher intelligence here, Alanka, as I have in my Maidens of the Wheel deck. Though, see, I'm doing this for financial reasons. So, to honor the person who inspired me to do this, the owner of Wave Rider Scalar Wellness Meditation Studio, that is who I want to honor. And of course, if you want to be a sleeping prophet, you can go there. I see it with my notes, so yeah, it helps me every time I go there. Okay, so I got one from Sir Winston Churchill. I love Sir Winston Churchill. It's got a tree of life, and it's personifying the tiger's eye here, the second pentacle of Jupiter and Aquarius. And it says this is an age in which the mood decides the fortune of the people rather than the fortunes decide the mood. Wonderful, because now, as I said that, it's interesting because I watched that very thing flip. I was seeing the fortune decide the mood there, because I'm watching my memory change, and my ultra short term and short term there was not connecting in the highest manner, but I saw and it did connect. It was an opportunity there that I extended. So let's create our coordination here. So this, so we're thinking of action here, practical energy here. Well, this is what's practical. This is group focused. This coordinates the mood with an orientation towards purpose that let's see here. Well, what's bouncing back and forth in my mind here is the stillness and how the fortune decides the mood, which gets funny, and how the mood decides it, and things slow down. I have slowed down here, and it is that I want that interest to keep the anticipation, silent anticipation, to be enthusiastic. That move with an orientation towards purpose that enthusiastically manifests brilliance. But let's go with brilliant results. Excuse me. So there we go. And so here's our sentence now. My will is feelings of its silent anticipations through imagined fantasies of magic. This separating the celestial from the sacred, creating the fact of space being a knowledge. This is stillness responding to the perfection of faith in the Most High. This coordinating the mood with an This coordinates the mood with an orientation towards purpose that enthusiastically manifests brilliant results. Wonderful. So this is just a basic introduction to how we'll be doing things. And it is that what I'm doing here is I'm memorizing this. So let's see what comes up here, because this really is about memory changing. So of the 7 psychosynthesis and the fascination here, and the vice and the lust, I see the Buddha doesn't actually take out here of the fascination. So it gets interesting here how I notice my thought choose the aha moment over the very embodiment of the changing logic of how I'm separating all the facts, and how I'm taking that passion, and we really got the feeling, we got our will feeling and purpose. We've made practical action, but now we need to, I want to improve on, and we need to improve on, because as you're listening, I think you should be taking in these aspects and maybe be making notes as to how, as a being, we should be changing. It is that I want you to be pointing out, and that is taking note of how I'm changing. And this is a very introduction section. I find it funny because the imagination, well, I do want to construct how use nature more. We got the tap root. We tapped into the roots. This is just introduction. This is an orientation towards purpose. So maybe it's perfect that we see this enlightenment as just a glimpse in the logic separating the basic facts, so our passion can be practical in this manner. But of course, as I'm sensing this in my mind, what I want to do is be able to take any idea. So what I can do is extract the idea from the situation here, which is what I'm doing. But what I'm noticing here is, as a Buddhist, let me become fully relaxed and out back because I need to share how I extract this. Well, I'm at peace. I am noticing brilliance, but at the same time, I want to be recalling things too. So I notice there's a point that can't be changed. This can always be changed. Life is always changing, and it is that this is happening in my. It can be my environment. It can be anything. Be broken down. So what do I want to make this? Well, I made this my philosophy towards life and how I share myself to be. I'm sharing my learning and my teaching. And the teaching is what makes this force see, what makes it interact with me in a way that it frees up change. So let's just go through the 7 types again and the basic techniques, what must be included, the highest goal, and the results. So first off, I noticed that I'm starting with the basic technique because I love seeing how I should do things. So for the will, of course, we have grasping, the basic technique, and that's what we've been doing here. We've been grasping the beginning glimpses of enlightenment. We are personifying our Buddhism, and we're going to be personifying all religion, all cultures to be sharing. For instance, the Aboriginals. What what I'm pointing out here is our sense of satisfaction. We're joyful. We had a glimpse of enlightenment. We had a glimpse of enlightenment. We saw our shadow self through Karo Young. We saw if we were dreamers or if we were awake. I'm wondering right now about the dreamer who wanted to hate. What wrath could be. And now we see what's interesting here is through this perspective, I see my consumption as a human being and my manifestation are creating a pack point to where I want to take things in. So I'm seeing this. It's funny because as I want to move so forward on memorizing things, the basic technique, the grasping, what must be included, the inclusion, what must be developed, sorry, the inclusion, and then the highest goal being victory, and how that comes to be motivating power in my life. It is interesting how sending and receiving comes to play out. How do we want to change? So let's see what we come up with feeling. Because what I want this to be like as if I'm coming up with the truth for myself. So as far as my memory goes, that was not spot on as much as it could be. But right, going over it right now, I realize it also changes because of short-term memory. So we're trying to reach our long-term memory, but that means I could remember this in the moment while I'm hiking, and it could be faster, which is the whole idea, the entrainment, the brainwave entrainment, which is what meditation music does. So let's go back to the motivation being power here, because that's what we need to focus on. And then we need the very grasping, the basic technique, that's always be happening. And then we need the inclusion, what must be developed, what I'm doing right here to be creating the victory. When I mean creating, I mean we're constantly in the process of this. So that the feeling we're attaching and centralizing around love is the highest goal and the motivation. The attaching being the basic technique, and the centralizing being what must be developed. This comes to be the very truth of how I share my feeling toward me. So we have our mood focused, we have our sense of silent anticipation, we have our philosophy. And this is what makes intensity interesting, because when it comes to thought, when it comes to the mental aspect, I notice intensity comes to play a big factor, because what I'm noticing when I make the silent anticipation is I tap into that feeling, that intensity when I'm hiking, and it is that I get to choose my best. So, but what I need is the highest forms of my body, because I see I'm focusing on feelings. So now we're making a shift here to choosing the perspective of silence that embodies the intelligence of this highest performance. And of course, that is that the choosing is the basic technique, the perspective is the highest goal, that's what we did, and the silence was what must be developed, because that's when everything is so easy. But what gets interesting is, because what I'm doing here is memorizing certain words and keywords. They are keywords. I'm wondering about in our human lives why I couldn't just exhilarate myself to shout, yeah, or like what would we find that manic, or because my body language is pushing myself forward. I mean, it becomes a question of how we should see the mountain, and the mountain is going to give someone power. The mountain is all powering, so and the voice can connect to that. So I see no problem with one time. Yeah, fascinating. And of course, that could be untraditional, but I think we should change all these things here on Earth. So, choosing the perspective and the motivation of the mental aspect is the intelligence, of course. And it's funny how I come to see, as I'm memorizing this, the adolescent ahas, the ones that our mental health industry here in America lives off of, and around the world, because of how success can be and what is being created. That's why I will go back over it and solidify that intelligence being the motivation. Yes, I desire my intelligence to be the motivation mentally. So let's go back over real quick, because we want to be able to do this real fast. Of course, the motivation for the will is power. The highest goal is victory. The basic technique is grasping, and what must be developed is inclusion. And for feeling, it is that the basic technique is attaching, the highest goal is love, the motivation is love, and what must be developed is inclusion, not inclusion, excuse me, centralizing. So as I'm going faster, I'm noticing my memory. I like that more. It's funny how as performance, I love and acquire knowledge at a better rate when I'm going faster. But as I have the awareness here, I'm picking up the slower aspects, because, of course, as a Buddhist, I'm aware I'm in a very relaxed because it is that nirvana is always present. So here we are in to the mental, yeah, the intelligence, of course, is the motivation, the highest goal is the perspective, the silence is what must be developed, and the choosing is the basic technique. So as I'm noticing this, as I'm talking to you, I'm mastering picking up a thought, and I'm glad we're stopping at thought here, and mentally stimulating what is being created. So let's get to the imagination. Of course, we have the fantasy being a function. We'll just bring that up because we have the fantasy here of practicing magic. It being real or not, that is for the universe to keep at our will. And so we are unifying. We are having the basic technique of unifying the harmony, the the very thing that is motivating us to have the enduring beauty, the what must be developed, the endurance of beauty as our highest goal. So the beauty, of course, is what we want to have. And I want to explain here, which we all can do, which is make something beautiful. Well, I don't just see someone talk about this, but this is what we should talk about with the third eye, is that when I try and illumine something, it becomes controversial about how my imagination is enduring beauty. That's when the harmony goes through the most conflict. When I make something shine, it is that it's just perfect, and I see the inner aspect more, the outward expression of it shine more. What's interesting about the illumination is that I want it to be the most beautiful in the sense that it's protecting beauty. I want it to save. The shine is never worried because it's in the moment. It's projecting that brilliance. So what gets interesting here about the imagination is here how I want to talk about how we can just bounce around. So what's interesting here is how I can imagine Africa, how they have tribal natures, or how, and as I go as fast as I possibly could, in Russia they have the shamans there and how they govern things, and then in America our conventional way of life, our conventional medicine too. How this changes things is the communication patterns and what things can do, what they can be. So, for instance, I know in Australia they have Aboriginals and they have, of course, the general population has been affected by colonialism. Well, that's what I want to get into. Colonialism changed things a bunch, and how it diplomatically makes things out to be. Well, the Aboriginals are free. They know they're satisfied. They know they're joyful. They know they're calm, so they can take the extremes and while being serene, which is extreme, they can be optimistic and take possibilities that may be forbidden and awaken the general population into how we see and share our momentary glimpses of enlightenment. And that is through respect. So course, Winston Churchill does see differences that can be changed, but this is just his own political point of view in a different situation because he's just a different person. So let's continue and finish the final two or three, excuse me, are the logic, the passion, the action. The logic, of course, is we want to separate the facts through the detachment as a know-how. So the separation, of course, is the best basic technique. The detachment is the what must be developed, and the facts, of course, are the know-how, are the highest goal, and that's a know-how of how things are created. And that's because we want to take the very definition of how things are changing and point them out in the most informational context. So then we go to the passion, which is responding to the stillness of perfection with faith. We respond through the very best basic technique, and that makes the perfection possible, the high school. And that is what must be developed are stillness and motivation, of course, is faith. I step into a church. I am here now. I want to be still. I want to be faithful. I want to just let life be and flow with what can be. It is keeping the stillness and the flow in harmony and balance. And then, of course, we have our action, our practical energy, being the coordination, the very basic technique, and the highest goal being the manifestation of the motivation, which is results of our orientation towards purpose, which is our very own what must be developed. And that is it. So thank you all for being here today. What I can do now, though, is I have it primed. What we're doing is psychologically priming things. So that idea that I was focusing on, well, now it surrenders to my will. This is what I think we all need. So in a business scenario, in a business setting, I can look at a company and I can see so many things about that company and decide and see how I would want to invest in them, how I would want to choose them as my employer, and just there's so many facts we can find out just through the basic creative aspects, and we'll be working with that. Thank you.